All right, shalom, guys. Welcome to this live event where we'll be discussing the fourth claim of Alex O'Connor. Jesus never claimed to be God. Now, this is being broadcasted on 4 different platforms, so I figured it'd be best for all of us to just kind of introduce ourselves with our channels, but, just do a little something like that. So let me start real quick. My name is Will Walkie. My YouTube is Power Tool Apologetics. I am a biblical Unitarian, pronomian, believer, and stuff like that. And we'll bring Mike over here. Go ahead, dude.
Hello, everybody. My name is Metaphysics Mike, and I also am a biblical Unitarian. I'm pronomian, meaning I'm pro the law, the Torah, and I'm excited to be here to discuss this with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, and then Brad.
Hello, everyone. I am Brad. Some of you may know me as Alternate Media Brad on TikTok. I am the president of Alternate Media. We are very much also pronomian, Unitarian on my part, but we love to discuss the topic.
And then finally, Jeremy.
Jeremy Williams. I'm with Renovating Faith, and actually that is an Alternate Media podcast. So I joined Alternate Media at the beginning of this year. And I just love having fun conversations and making fun of people. So,
all right, beautiful. So we will be discussing tonight the Jubilee show with Alex O'Connor, specifically Claim 4 again. And guys, in the description, all the YouTubes from all these guys are there. Please go subscribe and check them out. Now, guys, this just came up. I want to point this out real quick. Alex O'Connor posted in a few days. He will be having a formal debate with David Wood right here. Did Jesus claim to be God? There's a website right there, guys. There's the URL also at the top. Go check out Alex O'Connor. You can kind of see what he with this post that he's discussing. It's kind of funny because watching this claim number 4, I feel like no one. I don't know. I really didn't like the answers. I feel like the first person and the last person, Coley and Than, made the most realistic points. But I wonder if like David Wood watched that and he's like, hold my beer. I will go debate him now.
Yeah, but I think they were supposed to debate at the, what was that? The debate conference by Modern Day Debates. And then he backed out. So I think they're also doing that to catch up from that.
okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So let's go right in. I have the video right here. I'm just gonna play it. If you guys just tell me to stop, we can stop. We can address some of the points. Coley has some interesting points, to start. So you guys are ready. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Bless you. Thank you.
My next assertion is that Jesus never claimed to be God.
This chair system is terrible.
Coley, so talk to me.
Yeah.
Where does Jesus claim to be God?
Yeah, so I'm curious, when you say that, are you including the book of John?
So I think that the book of John is probably the least historically reliable in this case. So I'm talking about the historical Jesus.
Yeah.
I do think that there are a number of instances where Jesus appears to claim to be God in John's gospel.
Okay.
But even if we think that he actually said that, I still think that there's reason to believe that he wasn't claiming to be God in the sense of being identical with Yahweh.
When you talk about the historical Jesus, what else do you pull from other than the Gospels of things that he might have said?
I think that he might have said we only really have the Gospels, but
Okay.
there are multiple sources within the Gospels.
What do you date it at?
Around 70 AD.
Okay, yeah.
I sort of go with the scholarly consensus. And so you have also a bunch of sources, the unique sources to Matthew and Luke.
Yeah.
You also have this potential source called Q
Yeah.
from the German for quell, right? All of this kind of stuff. John comes in the latest.
Sure.
And so when we're trying to figure out what the historical Jesus actually said, if we've got multiple sources all claiming that he said the same thing, then I think we have good reason to think that he actually said that. Claims like, before Abraham was, I am, I and the Father are one, anyone who's seen me has seen the Father, only appear in the Gospel of John, not in any of our other sources, which I think makes them less historically reliable.
Well, I like the claim.
Will,
I got to come
pause
at it
here.
a little bit different approach because
Yo,
Okay, so listen, right off the jump, I think they do everybody a disservice, and that is that they didn't define what they mean by God. Like, if you do not actually define what the word is in both the Greek and the Hebrew, well, then what exactly are we talking about, right? Jesus never claimed to be God, right? That's so relevant as we get later into this, because without that definition, they're just going in circles on a lot of different things. Right off the jump, the word God should have been defined. Okay, what do you guys think about that?
I 100%. I would say that's one of those things where especially when me and Austin get into these discussions in like a TikTok live, one of the first things we try to establish is like, okay, first of all, what is God? What do you mean by God? What define deity? How do you categorize a deity?
Right, because
Yeah,
even what is it
100%.
like Psalms 82, right? Where he's like in the council of gods, like ye are gods, right? So that's actually a good point. I didn't really put two and two together like that, but that is a good one.
Yeah,
That's
and Jesus quotes that too. Is it not written in your law, ye are gods, right? So here you have Jesus calling other humans gods. Even in Hebrew, like Exodus chapter 7, God calls Moses Elohim.
Yes.
Right. So that word God actually has a semantic range, which can include humans and even angels. So without defining that, I think it's just you're setting yourselves up to fail, and you just so see it in this conversation.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, I feel like Coley is probably the second best one though to like argue this. Like I made notes, and I have most notes for Coley, and then for Than. Everyone else is just like I feel like they defeat themselves. But yeah, you guys good then? All right, let's pour it back up.
Because I think that the gospel writers are claiming that Jesus is God. Sure. Let's just go with Mark. As Mark starts, he talks about John the Baptist preparing the way for the Lord. Right. What is your response for that? Because
all right, hold on. I want to talk about this. And I feel like this is going to be a very common thread of agency. We see he is making the way for the Lord, which would be, Yud He Vav He. So I have the verse here I have. And where is it? It's Mark chapter 1, verse 3, where it says, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Verse 2 just says it is written in Isaiah the prophet, which is kind of misleading because he pulls from two other sources. He says, behold, I'm sending my messenger before you who will prepare your way. The voice of one calling out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. So he pulls us from Isaiah 40, verse 3, where the voice calling out in the wilderness, clear the way of the Lord in the wilderness, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Also Malachi 3:1 and Exodus 23:20. And I feel like a lot of Christians, what they miss about this particularly is when Yod He Vav He is being used and then it's being pointed towards Jesus, they'll be like, see, look, that makes Jesus the Yud He Vav He that we read about. And again, agency on my YouTube channel, I have a 1 hour and 8 minute video talking about this, but we see so many other examples of in Deuteronomy 31, I Yud He Vav He will cross over the river and destroy your enemies. Joshua, go. Exodus 7, I Yud He Vav He will hold the staff in my hand. I Yud He Vav He will strike the Nile River. Hey, Moses, tell Aaron to hold the staff and strike the Nile River. Right. Even Ezekiel 34, I Yud He Vav He will watch over my sheep and shepherd them, feed them, take care of them. Verse, what is it? I think like 24 of 34. David, go shepherd them, take care of them, this and that. The third.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can also
So
see
it's
in the
just
book of John. Oh, we get a little cut off there. Yeah, the book of John, like chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all throughout it, he's saying, I'm not here to do my will, but the will of him who sent me. God sent me. It's reiterated. His words are not his own. He can do nothing on his own authority. All of those, I think, are supporting him as an agency, as the Messiah would.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that it's not literal, and I feel like if Christians did a better job of reading the Old Testament or the Tanakh, you would see these forms of agency. You would see that specifically Lord and all capitalized, the Tetragrammaton being used, that he will do something, but then there is a human servant that goes and does his will. And then the Father is then giving credit for doing it.
Yeah.
But Is it okay if I keep playing or?
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right.
Ensuing Jesus comes.
I've no problem saying that Mark is intending to portray Jesus as God. It's not entirely clear, but I have no problem just granting that for the sake of this conversation. I think that the belief that Jesus is God is something that develops in early Christianity after Jesus died. I think there's nothing that Jesus said himself that can make us confidently say that he was walking around claiming to be God.
What do you need in order to believe that Jesus is God? Because even if we take kind of this development in the Gospels, we can go before that. So would you say Paul's letters like Philippians and Colossians, would you say they were written before the Gospels?
Yes, they were written before the Gospels.
So if we're going before the Gospels, we have Paul claiming that Jesus is God in Philippians 2, where he's saying was in the form of God, or maybe like a better translation would even be the essence or the nature of God.
Yeah, the problem.
Whoa, okay.
Seamus actually has a beautiful article on this. This one gets me. So the King James is really the only translation that makes a Trinitarian argument, okay? Because the word form, and Brad's actually the first one to point this out to me, is more like image, okay? This passage is a perfect text for recapitulation theory. It is not good for the Trinity. It says that in the Greek, it says, who being in the form of God thought equality with God not something to be attained, right? That's the actual translation, not robbery to be equal with God. So he's in the image, the form, the image of God. What did Adam do? Adam wanted to be God. What do we see in Isaiah that the king of Babylon or Lucifer, however you want to translate that, he said, I will be like the Most High. So you have these two great sins are wanting to be like God. And then you have Jesus who comes in and says he didn't think that equality with God was not even something to be attained, but rather took on him the form of a servant. So, yeah,
it's like a direct contrast to previous wicked men who thought they could be equal with God.
Yeah, and another question I always ask when we're talking about Yeshua as the image is, I'll say, is an image separate than the thing it represents? Where the answer is yes, right? So people will bring it up, and
you are not your shadow,
right? Yeah, all of that is like implied, right? It's not actually implicit in the text. And when you ask those simple questions, it just breaks down.
Right.
Now, I think it's very, very disingenuous though to translate it. Now, the NIV actually translates it as being in the very nature of God. Right, nature, and then some other Bible translations will even say like essence, but it's actually none of that. It's literally just what you're looking at. Like you can, everyone knows who Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan is, right? You can say that Kobe Bryant is the morphe, because that's the Greek word that's being used, like the form of Michael Jordan, right? Because like he came after, not he's the same person. I want to go to Mark chapter 16, verse 12, where it literally says that Jesus appeared in a different form or morphe to the two men, and they did not recognize them. Not that Jesus like changed his essence or his nature, but it was in a different outwardly form. Also in Job 4:15 from the Septuagint, it says this: a spirit glided past my face, and the hair on my body stood on end. I stopped, but I cannot tell what it was. A form, morphe, stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. Right. So we even see this in Job, where it's just talking about the form that he can see. Not that Job here can see the essence or the nature or what it's made out of or any way, shape, or form. It's literally just the appearance right there. And I feel like even with us, I'll speak for myself here as a biblical Unitarian. Absolutely. The Son is in the image of the Father. The Son represents the Father. If you spit in the Son's face, the Father's going to say, why did you spit in my face? Because he's the image of the representation. And that kind of goes more with like the whole agency type thing. But it's like one of those things. It's like, do your research on morphe. Stop just like listening to your pastor about, oh yeah, hit him with the, Proverbs chapter 2 verse 8, or 2 verse 6, excuse me, that'll get them. You know what I mean?
So what you're talking about there also is it's almost a direct one-to-one equivalent with Adam's being made in the image of God. right? We're obviously not talking about a physical form because God has no physical form. Of course, I know the Trinitarian would say, well, yeah, Jesus, but but what it connotes, and the reason I used shadow earlier is because that's kind of the idea. Actually, the word there can equally translate to shadow. Man was made in the shadow of God, right? Which again fits perfect with Yeshua's own statements that I only do what the Father does, right? Well, because that's true. Your shadow can only do what you do, right? It's the two-dimensional casting of the three-dimensional being, right? That's what mankind's job always was to reflect God to the creation. Jesus is not unique in that way. It's literally all of our jobs. Jesus was just better at it than we were.
I think if there's any Peter Pan fans in here, they'll probably disagree with you on that whole shadow thing.
Well, so it's very interesting, actually, that you bring that up. Because what happens when Peter Pan's shadow becomes disconnected from him? He causes havoc. He wreaks havoc everywhere. Like, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
The shadow needs to be connected to the one casting it. So, ergo, mankind needs to be connected to God, right? Because when we're disconnected from God, we're a shadow acting of our own will, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, something else here I want to chime in that I'm just seeing it repeatedly already. Obviously, I've watched it about 2 times, but watching it again, like it always comes to the forefront. Again, because they didn't define it, I see them going back and forth. Like you actually don't know what they're arguing for. There's no target they're both aiming at. It appears like Alex is thinking to himself, like, well, I don't believe that Jesus claimed to be God, but the Gospels, the people who wrote them did try and make him be that he was God. It's like, well, okay, in what sense? Are you saying that he is the God, the creator? Well, then definitely not. Like the writers of the New Testament aren't saying that. They make an explicit distinction between them, between God and him. So it's like, what does he mean? He's willing to accept that, yeah, the Gospels portray Jesus as God. Like, what does that mean? Like, that's the whole debate. I still can't believe that he wants to come on here and debate Jesus never claimed to be God, but then they don't define that. Like, in this debate, that is imperative to making any progress at all, like across the whole spectrum. And so you're seeing it here already. And the further you go in, it just becomes more apparent. They don't know what they're arguing for. Like
he came very close at one point in what we just watched by essentially stating that he doesn't believe that Jesus ever claimed to be, for me, I say Hashem, right? The Yod He Vav He. And I mean, that probably is where the argument needs to stay, because that's really the distinction we're all making, right? And that would be the distinction that the authors of the Gospels all make, right? They do draw a clear distinction between Hashem, right? The God, and Yeshua.
facts.
Yeah, I think too. I think Alex is kind of just granting that, like, hey, sure, the biblical authors probably have thought it because, like you said in the beginning, like this is developed later on. I think he's just kind of granting that they believe that, just so the argument doesn't get derailed to where did they agree with that or not? Sure, I will grant that for you. Show me in the text where Jesus calls himself God, essentially. But because I think Alex is being very generous by basically allowing these, like, sure, let's just kind of, but Mike, it's kind of like what you said. Sure, I'll grant this to you. Now just cut to the chase. Like, show me where he identifies to be that Yud He Vav He specifically.
Yeah, it's just
a pawn to get to the king.
all the people who come in all these arguments we're going to keep hearing, they come in at it from like a very kind of esoteric way. Like they're all just like pulling from different places, and we're going to get into like the 2 powers later. I mean, it's like that's what it is. It's all this undefined sort of later idea of God, right? So to me, it's just so important.
The fascinating thing, right, because you could almost tell right away that this is how it was going to begin, right, is that the fella immediately comes out with, well, what do you include, like, the Gospel of John? Like, because it's like the Gospel of John is just this, like, nail in the coffin to them. They really believe that. So I like that he pushed back with, well, actually, in my personal opinion, the Gospel of John is the least reliable. It's like, okay, I mean, I do believe in the Gospel of John. I don't believe that it supports the Trinity, but like if you do look at it from an academic perspective, which Alex O'Connor does, John is the least reliable gospel.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It arises. It's the last one, right? That's one of the key points. Comes in way later. There's all sorts of different speculations.
It's also not a singular account. John didn't write John. More than likely, it was an entire congregation that gave over the stories that John is writing. It's culturally ignorant of just generic Israelite culture of the time. Like it clearly, it seems like it is from the perspective of someone not Jewish.
John basically comes about as far after the other three as the other three come after the resurrection.
Right.
If you really think about it, it's like the grandchild, right? And so it's like me trying to relay a story of something my grandfather did that I didn't see or hear. Like it's very, very far removed. And I love, he points this out later. John is one of the first ones to come in with a intentional theological goal. Right?
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So, guys, cool if I continue?
Yeah.
Problem, I think, with sort of quote mining in this respect is that there are quotes that point us in either direction, even in the Gospel of John. So Paul, for example, says that there is one God, which is the Father, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, seeming to separate them. Jesus says things like, my Father is greater than I am. He says things like, nobody knows the hour, not even the Son knows the hour, but only my Father in heaven. He says when he's crucified in the first two Gospels, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? I could point to these and say, these are Jesus claiming that he's separate from God.
Well, there is a distinction from the Father and the Son. So we're not, but instead of quote.
Okay, hold on. I just want to say something really quick. This is one of my big things. Like, Jesus makes a distinction between himself and God. Within Trinitarian thought, God is understood to be Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So it's not that the Son is being distinct from the Father. It's that the Son is being distinct from God. Right. And then as we see, like right here, Coley goes, right, well, yeah, there are distinctions between the Son and the Father, but that's not what those verses say.
Yeah.
Jesus distinguishes himself from God. Not just the Father, but God.
It's being
my God, why have you forsaken me? He doesn't, if he said, my Father, why have you forsaken me? Or the Son knows nothing, like only, I think he does say only the Father. But it's still, he's distinct. The Son is distinguished from God.
It's a core difference for sure.
Right.
Yeah. It's being very picky and choosy about where God means the Father and where God means God.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's so funny because again, the term's just thrown out there, but the distinctions matter. It's read into the text. And even if it did, honestly, that would just be proof that the Father is God. It's the only God, like 1 Corinthians 8:6 says,
Well, because like all seriousness, when they make the distinction between, like, there's many gods, many lords, but there's only like one God, or he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Okay, so the Son is talking to God. Is this the Father or the Spirit? Prove it. Like, we can say, like, yeah, obviously it's the Father, but to a normal Trinitarian, you can't prove to me if he's talking to the Father or the Spirit, or maybe he's talking to both persons.
I don't think he was praying at all. So.
Yeah.
I think he was preaching, not praying. But they cover that later. I don't want to spoil it.
All right. Sorry. I just had to bring that up real quick. Like, but yeah, let's continue.
Quote mining, I could just quote the whole thing. That though he was in the form of God, didn't count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men.
Sure. So I also have no problem saying that Paul thought that Jesus was God.
Okay,
my assertion is that Jesus
that's actually
claims to be
super
God.
clarifying for me, because then my question is, what piece of evidence do you now need in order to believe that Jesus claimed to be God? Like, what is it for you to be like, you know what, that convinces me?
Jesus, in his own words, saying that I am God.
Right, but he does that in John.
Where?
Before Abraham was, I am.
Sure. So
he does say that. He does. I swear, it's there. Okay, where is it? Well, he said before Abraham was, I am. Like, okay. Not the same.
So this is one thing that I absolutely love, and Brad, you guys mentioned this in one of your episodes, and then I'm actually slightly disappointed because anytime this has come up, you've now gone a whole different argument. But Jews who believe in a human Messiah believe that the soul of the Messiah was the first thing created, that all things were created through that soul, and it was for him. So John 1 can be read entirely from a Unitarian Jewish perspective and not be lying.
Right. So there's multifacets to that. There is the belief that because there are like I think 7 things that they believe preceded the creation, the things that were created before the earth was created. Yes, the spirit of Messiah is one of those things, but that still makes him a created being and not God. But I think Abraham also is considered to be one of those things, and they've got a way of explaining that.
It even says Israel, though, too.
Right.
Israel's not a literal conscience, pre-existent person chilling with them.
Yeah,
unless we're going to involve a quadrinity.
I haven't even seen the word spirit in there either. So I've read those. Just last week, I went through all the different sources. It's also cited in the Targums, but it says the name, right? Like the Targum of Zechariah, 4:8 or something like that. That the name of the Messiah pre-existed before the creation of the world. Yeah, right. It's like you said, 6 or 7 things that existed in God's thoughts and contemplations. I thought it says the name, not necessarily the spirit.
I think the Targum does say the name, and that may even be one of the Midrashim that says the name. But it's generally accepted also that the spirit of Messiah did exist, and that the creative acts were therefore completed and carried out through that spirit, so to speak. And it's never understood that this Messiah is God, though, right? It's one of those, like Jeremy said, it's one of those ways that like this actually still makes perfect sense in Judaism and does not connote that the Messiah is God. It doesn't grant him deity.
Yeah. So hey, just because we got some of the comments, let me just address this, and then I want you guys just to jump into. So what a lot of people will do is they'll say John 8:58, before Abraham was born, I am, right? The ego in me, right? And they'll translate this back to Exodus 3:14, where God says to Moses, I am who I am, or Edia Esha Edia in the Hebrew. However, if we look at the Greek Septuagint there, right, it's a God spoke to Moses saying, ego in me, ha'on, I am the being. And if you look in any Septuagint, the being is capitalized. So ha'on, that is to be associated with the Yud He Vav He. And then continuing on, and he said, thus ye shall say to the children of Israel, ha'on has sent me to you. Now, even with ego in me, it's used countless times. In Matthew 26:25, it's being referenced to Judas. All right. Luke 1:19 is being referenced to Gabriel. John 9:9 is being referenced to the blind man. Acts 10:21 is being referenced to Peter. But here's the thing, and this is one of the things I noticed, right? So in Luke 1:19, it says, I am Gabriel, ego and me Gabriel. So he says, I am Gabriel. In John 9:9, I am the one, ego and me, the one, right? I am what? The one. Okay. Acts 10:21, I am the one you are looking for, right? But that's not what it said in John 8:58. John 8:58 is just, I am. So really, and we kind of mentioned this whole pre-existence, putting pre-existence in proper context. That's what Yeshua, I believe, what he is alluding to, not a God claim. Because if it said, like, ego and me ton theon or something, you would have a case. But it doesn't say that. He doesn't clarify. It just says, I am. And that's it.
Ton is the definite article, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Because, yeah, if it said ego and me ton theon or something, like, I don't know how it would exactly work in the Greek. You know, we don't have Dr. Dustin Smith here. I did talk to him, by the way. I asked him if he wanted to come on. He said, I have faith in you guys because you all have common sense. So thank you, Dr. Dustin Smith. He was busy, but he had faith in us. But seriously, though, it's just I am. We see how the Greek language is, where it's I am what? I am Gabriel. I am the blind man. I am the one who you are looking for, right? It's always something that comes after it to identify who you are. But in John, it doesn't. But,
Agreed.
All right, let me pull this back up and we will continue. I just know John 8:58, it's mentioned like 500 times. So let's just get it out of the way. And then if anyone wants a reference to this, go back to like the 30-minute mark. You can hear it at.
Before Abraham was, I am. First start, as I've said, it only appears in the Gospel of John. We don't know if the
But he at
historical
least
Jesus
said it once, and the claim is that he never did.
If he actually said that, if he was going around claiming to be God in explicit terms,
That's a great.
why
yeah.
is it that none of the other Gospel writers thought it was a relevant detail to mention?
It's difficult to now deal with it because you are acknowledging.
Okay, pause. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
You've
no,
been
that's
voted
great.
out by
Hey,
the majority.
Great to meet you too.
All right, real quick. I'm just curious. How do you guys think Coley did?
Not great. Honestly, I'm just going to be real. I don't think any of them did that well.
He did
Yeah,
about
yeah.
as well as I would expect a youth student in a youth group who recently got saved and is very passionate about his faith, right? And I mean that in like the best ways, because like, you know, the teen who comes out of whatever life he comes out of gets saved and just dives deep into scripture as much as he can. But nonetheless, he's still wet behind the ears. He's still green. And that's about as well as you would expect them to perform in that kind of a conversation.
But dude, I think he's the second best one.
I think
Really? You would say that?
I think Than did the best and Coley did the second best. Comparing to everyone else. We will continue though. I just wanted to get a quick thing from you guys, but yeah, let's I think this one's Jacob.
Can you
What do they want to
just
sell us?
hear me out? No, all work management platforms are the same. They take forever to learn.
Ads.
And we're back.
Hey, how's it going?
Alex, it is great to meet you. I've been
Nice
a
to meet
fan of yours for a long time, even though I'm a believer.
Thank you so much.
So-
that means all the more.
You claim that this was a later tradition that developed.
Mm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, when would you say that tradition developed?
Probably fairly early on. I mean, the writings of Paul are decades after Jesus' death.
Okay, so do we have a better source for knowing what Jesus actually claimed than the Gospels?
No, we don't.
Okay, so if the Gospels are indeed the best source for understanding who Jesus was, do those Gospels portray him as a divine person?
Well, like I say, I think that there's only one gospel that unambiguously portrays Jesus as himself claiming to be divine, and that's the Gospel of John, which is the latest and most theologically motivated of all of the Gospels. Even then, the claims that we're talking about, things like, before Abraham was, I am, the Greek term there is ego eimi. One chapter later, in John chapter 9, Jesus heals a blind man, and the blind man goes back, and people say, were you not the man who was born blind? And what does he say? Ego eimi, I am. It's also just a way of identifying yourself and saying, it's me.
I would want to know then, in the synoptic Gospels,
Yes.
are they claiming that Jesus is just a mere man?
I think that it's debatable what the synoptic authors are doing, but I'm happy to grant that the synoptic authors were trying to portray Jesus as God and thought that Jesus was God. I have
So,
no
so
problem
that
saying
means all four gospel writers were intending to portray Jesus as God.
that
Is
may be the
correct?
case, yeah.
Okay. Now, in the first century Hebrew culture, do you worship anyone other than God?
Depends what you mean by worship. So the Greek word for worship used in the New Testament is, I don't know how to pronounce it, proskynene or proskenine, something like that, which typically in the Hebrew is translated in the Septuagint to that word, proskynene. In the Hebrew is a word which just means something like bow down before. So for example, the same word is used when Jacob bows down before Esau. The same word is used when Joseph's brothers bow down before him when he's the governor of Egypt. The same word is used for King David, for example, in multiple books of the Bible.
But in the synoptic gospels, is Jesus portrayed as being worshipped?
I think at some points, yes. So, for example, at the end of John's Gospel with Doubting Thomas, at the beginning in the birth narratives, of course, I think the birth narratives were forged in later additions to the New Testament.
I want to focus entirely on the synoptic gospels because those seem to be the one that you think are the most shaky on this.
Fine by
In
me.
the synoptic gospels, is the charge of blasphemy given against Jesus?
Yes.
Absolutely, right?
Yes, yeah.
Can you be given the charge of blasphemy merely for claiming to be the Messiah?
Well, let's find out. In the book of Acts, St. Stephen has a vision before the Pharisees. What vision does he have? He looks up before the Pharisees and he says, I can see God and I can see Jesus sat at the right hand of God. Separating Jesus and God, what do the Pharisees do? They stoned him to death for blasphemy. So we know that you didn't have to claim that Jesus was identical to God in order to be stoned for blasphemy.
How about judging the entire world? Is that something that a human would do?
I suppose it'd have to be a very special kind of human. I understand that you think that only God can judge, sure.
So did the Synoptic
hold on,
Gospels did the Synoptic Gospels portray Jesus as the one who is going to judge the world?
I think that may be true. The Synoptic Gospels may portray him as being that. What I'm asking for is...
Okay, so I want to jump in on this real quick. When he talks about judgment, and just because I made a video on this, just because there's a lot of interesting points. So where are my notes at? When we look at like judgment, right? Like, yes, God will judge us, right? But so in John 5:22 and 27, chapter 8 verse 16, and chapter 9 verse 39, ironically they're all John. Jesus says that the Father will no longer judge and has been given judgment from the Father. Right. So I think this would be one of the hard claims. And actually, I feel like Jacob's kind of digging himself a hole, because how are you trying to prove that Jesus is God? If Jesus is God, he never changes. Right. But he was now given authority, meaning that he didn't have authority to judge people before, but now he does. Right. He has changed. Also, when we read Acts 17:31, Romans 2:16, and 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1, all of these writers, from, you can say Luke or Paul, whoever, those verses say that God judges through a man. And then later is that man, Christ Jesus. That is who judgment is by. So going back to like the main argument, and Mike, I know you kind of brought this up, was we need to kind of identify what this argument is. Prove to me that Jesus never claimed to be God, but he will judge. Only God judges. But it was given to the Son. Right? The Son was allowed now to do something, meaning that the Son couldn't do this thing before. So is the Son all powerful because that is a trait that God has? Well, no, because the Son wasn't going to judge before, but now he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that I word this is really within their Christology, like the hypostatic union, right? Because they're the ones postulating that Christ has, two natures, one human, one divine. And so they're making the claim, right, that he is God, aka he has a divine nature because he's forgiving sins or because he's judging the world, right? Well, the problem is that those attributes are consistent with a human nature. That's the problem, right? So that's a divine nature is not entailed. And some of those attributes were even given to others, like, for example, the ability to forgive sins. Jesus is told the apostles, like, hey, if you forgive their sins, they are forgiven, right? If you hold them, then they are held. So that's how I like to word it, because it's within their language, right? Every single quote divine attribute that proves he's God is actually just consistent with a human nature.
I think it's funny to me also how so Alex has actually set the stage here in a beautiful way, because he can actually walk away from this saying that nobody even came close to refuting his claim, because they're not actually arguing against his claim at this point. His claim is Jesus never claimed to be God. They are trying to prove that Jesus is God. Well, the divinity of Jesus is not the topic of the conversation. It's whether or not Jesus claimed to be God. That's the topic of conversation. So they're all arguing something that that's not even what's being argued. He is simply disputing that Jesus never claimed to be God, which is why he can grant that maybe even the authors of the Gospels believed that, but none of them recorded him ever claiming it.
Yeah, like they're just going to look up like an attribute that God has, and if Jesus shows this attribute, like the whole judgment thing, we know God judges, but now Jesus judges because of what he said in the Gospel of John. Okay, so that doesn't make him God. Can I just also just comment on one of the things that bugs me every time that I see it done, and it happens so frequently with normative Christians, is an appeal to ancient Jewish culture, and then they make some statement that
make sense in their own logic that actually has nothing to do with ancient Jewish culture. The road that he was trying to go down with, well, I mean, is claiming to be the Messiah blasphemy? Yes. In ancient Jewish culture, making that claim of yourself was blasphemy. You had to be named Messiah by somebody else. Somebody else had to point the finger at you and go, that's the Messiah. This is the job that you're supposed to do, right? But you weren't supposed to come out and go, hey, guys, I'm the Messiah, right? That's blasphemy.
This is why Jesus always said, you say that I am. You have said. He never says yes. He says, you're saying it.
Yeah, you said so.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring this back up. All right.
I love the red flag thing.
Oh man, it's terrible.
In Jesus' own words, or indeed in his own actions, claiming to be God. For example, a moment ago you said that he was stoned for blasphemy. Can you be stoned for blasphemy for doing something other than claiming to be God? In the book of Acts, St. Stephen is stoned for exactly that. So do you agree that that at least isn't an indication that Jesus is claiming to be God?
I don't know that they necessarily were stoning him for that exact thing. I don't know the exact context of that. With that in mind, the divine birth of Jesus is another factor that's in all the synoptic gospels. In those gospels, Jesus is born of a Virgin Mary and the Holy Spirit.
It's only in two of the synoptic gospels, and in Luke's at least is probably a later edition. It wasn't in the original version of Luke.
Okay, I gotta mention this
also.
the virgin birth.
Matthew's also.
Wait, what's up?
He just said that in Luke's it's probably a later edition. It's like, yeah, there's very strong evidence that is also the case for Matthew's gospel.
But okay, so because like I know not everyone believes in the virgin birth and everything. Like, let's grant that for a second. Jesus is God because he was born of a virgin, right? We are all mortals because we have a mother and a father. Jesus, because he only has a mother that makes him God. Okay, so clarifying question. What is Adam then? He had no parents, right? He dust from the earth, breathed into his nostrils, and he became a living thing, a living being. So if anyone's going to be fully God here, I think Adam makes the best case for this. Like just being honest. If we're going to say because Jesus was born of a virgin, this makes him God, well then shoot, Adam must be like freaking alpha God. And what's Jesus, beta God? Like, you know what I mean? But
they are compared.
Well, yeah, you can make the comparison, but like
the first and the last Adam.
I would be, I am, and I've always been willing to grant the premise of a virgin birth with the caveat that, I mean, it is still a miraculous virgin birth if the seed of Joseph was still used. Okay. When people oppose the idea of the seed of Joseph being present, then they're suggesting that the sin nature that everybody believes in has a biological component that gets into a whole other argument that is very difficult to argue your way out of. But be that as it may, it actually still works with the comparison with Adam, right? Because what we know is that Adam was created and then Eve was separated out of him. So if we take that in like a chronological aspect, Adam was created with both a feminine and masculine nature. Let me specify nature, not body. And then the feminine nature was separated out of him, and Eve was created. So if we're comparing Jesus to Adam, we do have to ask ourselves, which Adam is he compared to? Is he compared to post-Eve Adam or pre-Eve Adam? Right? And I would dare say pre-Eve Adam, because God separated, right, male and female from one another to create Adam and Eve. And in a sense, by unifying Joseph with Mary of his own will and not of their own will, it's like reuniting the masculine and feminine into one perfect being again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I got a question. What do you? I'm sorry, Jeremy. You want to say something?
I just got distracted by the comment that someone's cracking yo mama jokes.
Oh, well, I was going to ask. So, what do you mean the seed was present? I would love to hear about that.
I just mean that, like, the idea of Jesus being a human being and having no X chromosome to speak of is a bit of a scientific non-starter, and it also creates problems for him being 100% man, There's also several problems regarding Torah law for him not to be of Joseph's loins, given that the impregnation happened after they were already betrothed. There's a whole lot of halakhic red tape that brings into the conversation, in which Joseph is actually being wronged if it's not his own child. The only way that Joseph is not being wronged by God himself, which would mean that God is breaking his own law, would be if the child is biologically Joseph's. There's also the fact that in order for Jesus to be the rightful heir to the throne of David, he has to be from the loin of David through the patrilineal line. It does not transfer through a maternal line.
Thanks. I appreciate that additional info.
Absolutely.
So if I can, this is an incredible book. I love C.S. Lewis, but this is complete. It's the middle one of his space trilogy, and he hypothesizes that a war happening on Venus basically relives the garden experience, right? And he hypothesizes what would have happened if Adam and Eve hadn't fallen. It's an incredible outcome where Adam basically sits on the throne of Earth, like in parallel.
And judges the world.
Judges the world. Everything. And this is C.S. Lewis, right? Trinitarian, Anglican. I love Lewis's stuff. But if Adam hadn't fallen, what could it be? It's absolutely mind-blowing. I love this, and I recommend everyone read it, Trinitarian or not, just because, first off, the Space Trilogy is amazing. But this particular book, he has so much good theology in here. But yeah, basically, if Adam hadn't fallen, who would be sitting on the throne? And it's a really cool hypothesis. But yeah, basically everything that Revelation, the Gospels attribute to Christ, Lewis says Adam could have had.
And that would be a natural conclusion to that question, though, right? What if Adam didn't sin? What would we live in? Well, really, the obvious natural conclusion is that he would be the ruler of the world at this point. But I did just want to clarify when I said that, because your specific question was regarding Joseph's seed being present. I mean, not in the sense that they copulated, but like, it's no less of a miracle because it's God that we're talking about. If God went, poof, seed from Joseph, plant and Mary, poof, life, right? It's no less of a miracle, and it's still a virgin birth.
I follow you. Yeah.
All right, let's bring it.
Regardless, is Jesus's birth portrayed as a normal human birth?
No, not at all.
In all of the synoptics. So if he's not a man, then
only two of them.
Well, that's fine. If he's not a man in these Gospels, then what is he?
Well, again, I'm happy to say that the synoptic authors were portraying Jesus as God, especially whoever added the birth narrative to Luke after the fact. I've got no problem with that.
You just don't trust those Gospels?
But, no, in the same way that I don't trust the legendary account surrounding the birth of Alexander the Great. Okay. I don't think that he was God either.
Is there a better, more reliable source for the historical Jesus than the Gospels?
No. But within the Gospels, there are more and less historically reliable points. So as I've already said, there are seemingly sources. So, for example, when Jesus says something in Aramaic on the cross, when he says, Eli, Eli.
Did Jesus...
Okay, pause. Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Cheers. Good fun. Nice.
What do you guys think of Jacob?
I again, I think he missed the forest for the trees. The question, the subject is, did Jesus claim to be God? And he spent his entire time trying to prove that Jesus is God.
Yeah. I feel like that's going to be the common occurrence. I think this is the older lady. Yeah. I think her name's Lori or something. She's funny.
It's me.
Huh.
Since you're new to HVAC Block, we'll go through your tax returns from the past 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed.
I could get money back.
Oh, sorry, Tham.
Lori Mills.
Alex, nice to meet you.
I'm not a fan because I don't know who you are, but
All the better. Well, the feeling is mutual.
yes. But anyways, so the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about them, but
Okay, well, they were found in 1943. It is proven that they are about 2,300 years old, and you've got your Bible there. Do you know when crucifixion started?
when crucifixion started?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so the Israelites, for instance, in King David's time, if you were found of blasphemy, how would they kill you?
Well, there are different ways of doing it. You could be stoned, for example. And
Right.
who's they? Is it?
Well, the Pharisees, the Sadducees.
Because of course it was the Romans that killed Jesus, and they didn't kill him for theological reasons.
So would you do me a favor?
Sure.
Open up Psalms 22.
Whatever you like.
King David wrote this.
Psalms 22.
Would you read it?
From the beginning?
Sure.
My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you...
What did Jesus say on the cross?
My God, why have you forsaken me?
Go
Boom,
on.
Jesus is God.
Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out day by day, but you do not answer. By night I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. What are you looking for here?
Well, basically, if you go on, it basically describes crucifixion. Written
Can I just stop you there? Because
no, but let me finish. Written 800 years before crucifixion ever even happened. It even gets into the Lamai.
What has that got to do with Jesus claiming to be God?
Well, what this has to do with it is I believe that the entirety of the Word of God, just like in John chapter 1, the Word became flesh and made its dwelling amongst us.
Yep.
I believe the entire Bible points to Jesus being the Messiah.
I agree with you.
So that.
And this is like, I hear this all the time, because Jesus is the Messiah. He's God, because only Messiah can be God.
It's a byproduct of the Christianese language, and I will call it that. It's funny. I just spoke to somebody about this recently, is because they've built in their head that Messiah is a deistic term when it's not. Right. And so because they've built in their head that Messiah is a deistic term, they come to this conclusion that, well, Messiah, therefore God, which is funny. I've had experiences with people where they press me on my views on Christology. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood for the conversation. I also know it's going to be a fruitless conversation with a particular individual. So I nod my head and go, I 100% believe that he's Messiah. And they go, good, yeah, right? Because they think that I've just agreed with them.
Yeah, it's just annoying to, like, guys, if you go back to what is it? Like, I think it's Isaiah 43, where it says, like, oh, Cyrus, my anointed, right? Cyrus is the Messiah. He is the anointed one. There's many Messiahs. People think like this only applies to Jesus, when that's just not true. It's guys, like, seriously, go look up. I don't know what the Strong's number is, but go look up the word for either Mashiach or Christos in the Greek. Look how many times it appears. Look to all the different human beings that it is applied to.
I mean, I live in the South, and we've got people who believe Donald Trump is appointed and anointed by God, and is borderline. I've actually seen a book that claims, I haven't read
because
it.
Because he is Jeremy. He is.
Do I?
He is.
This is where it gets crazy. I actually saw a book that tried to claim that because Jesus always referred to the Son of Man as if a third person, that there are two Messiahs. Jesus is the Son of God, and Donald Trump is the Son of Man Messiah.
Donald Trump is Mashiach ben David. And Mashiach ben Joseph was Jesus. I'm just kidding, by the way, everyone. I'm just kidding.
Somebody's going to clip that, and you're going to regret it.
I know someone is going to clip. You know what, though? Will Hess from the Church Split is going to clip what you said about a sin being passed down by the mail, and he's going to make an hour video on that. So
he will, because Will loves to troll, and I love Will.
Right.
We love Will.
I am the part of the reason Will published his book. So,
all right, I am going to pull this up. Let's keep going. She's funny though. Everyone has her flag up. She's gonna be done in like 5 seconds.
Did you notice though that so far everybody's cordially
the Messiah is not the same as God. Jews didn't believe that the Messiah.
It's like, I know.
But she's the first one who's been like,
I rolled my eyes when I heard what she said. But yeah, even when she first goes there, like, oh, I have no idea who you are. Like, really? So you just happen to walk on set and people are like, oh, hey, come sit down, take a seat. You're going to be, like, come on. Like,
yeah, what a crazy thing to say. I know I'm here to debate you, the feature of this show, but I don't even know you. Like, okay. How'd she even get picked?
She just happened to walk into the set and took a seat.
She's a theist. We're all theists here, right? He's the atheist. And like in this bout, he's the only one that we actually know.
Yeah.
So it's like, if even theists don't know who you are, probably just be a little humble, you know?
Yeah, all right, I'm gonna play it.
And he's in a round table. So his claim is Jesus never claimed Jesus never claimed to be God. Which
I was going to be God.
Well,
Okay,
it's
pause. Sorry, Lori, you've been voted out.
very nice to meet you.
Good for her, though. Okay,
Than
okay,
wanted
real
that
quick.
one too. You
This-
can see it.
He did. Dan did. Okay, this is the funniest one. This her name is Emily. This is the funniest one. I think she says like 5 words. I think 9 people raise their flags immediately.
I think she was just happy to be there.
Is she, dude?
You're in charge here. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Learning more about our God, that knowing like what happened in the Old Testament, he needed to have a representative to humble himself during these trials of the early beginnings of the Old Testament.
For the sake of time, I really need Jesus claiming to be God.
So my point is that he sent Jesus to be that human figure to represent God so he could humble himself in his own creation.
So where does Jesus say that I'm that person? I'm God.
When he claims to say, I am the light, I am the way, follow me, I am your God.
So she said God needed a human representative. So if you agree with that, raise your hand.
Agency, like
Holy
cow,
we
I
all-
mean,
That again, that was the whole point to creating man, was to have a human. His human representative is humanity. What a concept!
yeah.
Yeah, I whenever this type of topic, I always bring up that if God did exist, what could we really expect him to do? I mean, like, take the president of the United States. You guys are just talking about Trump, all right? Like, I could send him 100 messages and say, "Hey, talk to me." He doesn't have to talk to me, right? Like, the president holds a status that will, alienate him from just anybody. And I think it's sort of the same with God. He created the world, and it was his choice to work through prophets, to work with priests, right? Eventually the Messiah. I'm just saying, I don't see that as really this crazy foreign thing. If you're God, you hold a status higher than everything. What does he owe us? Nothing, with a capital N. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
We should be thanking God.
Yeah.
Thanks for sending anybody.
He says, I am your God.
I am the light. I feel like
Sure, he says that, but you just said, I am your God. I don't think Jesus says that.
my apologies on misrepresenting like the whole entirely of the words in that verse, but he's still claiming that he is the light that has that connection to that higher God.
Absolutely.
And I feel like with that connection
to that higher God.
yes, that he is in that physical form. I also want to say with the Virgin Mary, he has no father, and the angel blessed him with what he was saying
According
earlier.
to 2 mythical birth narratives.
Yes.
Which, by the way, the Gospels
I
don't
wanna
seem
ask
to have
what
any
your
knowledge
opinion-
of. Well, hold on. With the virgin birth thing that's come up twice now,
Mhm.
At one point, Jesus' family, in Mark's Gospel, Jesus' family come out to him and say that they think he lost his mind, which is a very strange thing for his family to say if there was a virgin birth that was known about.
And for the sake of flags, I just want to emphasize that Jesus is that human God form, that he needed to humble himself so he can truly understand how humans work in
I
his
just
own
want to know
creation.
how you know that was Jesus.
I want to emphasize that as well, just by the very teachings that he said and how
All
his
right, pause. You've been voted out. Please return to your
Thanks.
seat.
Hey, just wondering, what Catholic church is selling the skimpy Mother Mary belly tank tops? Where do you get those? Listen, maybe it's just me. I don't mean to be too judgmental, but yeah, I don't know. Just a Christian girl comes up
Dude, I
with a
think they're
belly
all
shirt, and I'm
Protestants,
just
actually.
Remember, they're Catholic, not Orthodox. So
Yeah.
I don't know. She did her best. She had a point. She stuck to it. You know, Alex really pressed her too. Yeah, I feel like he pressed her more than he pressed other people. I don't know if that was right. The poor girl. She starts talking and he's like, "Listen, I'm gonna need you to get to the point."
Well, okay, Mike. Though, I think Alex is looking at his timer and it's like, okay, we've wasted half the time already. Like, guys, answer the freaking question.
Yeah.
Like, And if he doesn't, just say he does it, and then we can talk about why you think he's got, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I think he's just getting annoyed. Like, I thought she's funny though. That was funny.
I thought the whole point about God needing to humble himself to understand the human existence is like, well, that's just a foundational misunderstanding of the nature of the cosmos, first of all, and like how the knowledge of God works, how God's knowledge of everything works. I mean, if God is in everything, right, which is something that can be biblically ascertained, then he has full knowledge of everything as self-knowledge. In other words, like we often hear the term, and Matt Walsh talks about this, he hates the term, but like the lived experience, right? Because we each have our own individual lived experience, but God knows exactly what your lived experience is because he experienced it through you.
Yeah.
Your experiencing it is his experiencing it.
All right, let's I forgot who's after this.
Yes.
Oh,
Every time.
another ad.
This one will be real.
After all your hard work, you can't let anything stand in your way.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you.
Big fan. I think that the general narrative of the Bible is the soon coming Messiah. Obviously, there's some discrepancies and disagreements on the whole notion of whether Jews believe that the Messiah was God or not. Around this Jesus figure is trying to do away with this up and coming revolution or whatever, where you specifically noted with the blasphemy that Stephen so-called did. I don't believe that they stoned him because he was claiming to be God. I think they stoned him because he was reaffirming this narrative that was so antithetical to the whole entire
so
time
what's this got to do with Jesus claiming to be God? I have no problem with saying that Jesus was claiming to be the Messiah, the Christ, and that the Jewish authorities saw that as a threat, and that the Roman authorities certainly saw it as a threat that he was claiming to be the King of the Jews. Those were the charges that he was actually crucified on, King of the Jews. Where does Jesus claim that he's God?
I'm just going to go back to John because it's the strongest source. And,
So
and you
give me
have
one
the
example.
multiple instances of I am. Like,
Let's take one.
even if it's just what you said earlier with the exactly how you quoted it. He says before Abraham. And Abraham in Jewish tradition and culture seems to be this forefather of their faith. So it's like, how are you putting a man, just any man above Abraham?
Well, he's not just any man. He's not claiming to just be any man.
No, I'm not saying
there's any old man, and then there's God. And
I'm
there's
saying
lots
that
of places in
Abraham's
between.
statement reaffirms that I am. That you can't just say before Abraham because Abraham
Well,
is the
can you
beginning of the
pause it?
Israeli timeline. Like this is the beginning of their faith.
Sure.
So to say that.
So for what it's worth, I don't think.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So listen, to me, this is a great example. Them all bringing up this passages about before Abraham was I am. This is just a sign of how uneducated Christians are. They don't understand the language. They don't understand the historical context, right? We are all past the councils, the creeds, the commentary. I mean, Trinitarianism has affected virtually every Christian denomination. And like the repeating of this statement as if this is some smoking pew, okay, makes no sense. Folks, it was promised to Abraham, right, through Genesis 12 on through what, like chapter 17, that through his offspring, all nations of the earth would be blessed. And then Paul comes in and tells us in Galatians chapter 3 that the promises were made to Abraham and to his offspring. And he literally says, who is Christ? Okay, so when he's like the context of the conversation is who do you make yourself out to be? Okay, the statement ego eimi, right? But like before Abraham was I am, is literally him acknowledging the promise made to Abraham of the Messiah. That is like a very creative way to proclaim that he is the Messiah.
It's been
and just like the fact that none of us know this. Like I remember when I first learned this, I was like, how was I never taught this? You know, like it's unfortunate that the New Testament it's not really a book you can just read and immediately understand. These are historical documents, ancient text. You have to understand the historical context. You have to understand all the different surroundings of their culture, of the language. Like, context creates comprehension. And just the fact it's so reiterated by like many different people, it's like we need to do a better job at teaching people. We have to help them learn where we have not been taught correctly, that we've been trained to read these things and just not get it. It's not right. It bothers me. It really does. And last thing I want to say is, the book of John has these really powerful things. You have the prologue, right? The very beginning, which virtually all scholars agree. The rest of the book is to be read in light of the prologue. But then also you have a summary statement by John. And what's it say? These things I have written to you so that you may believe what? That Yeshua is the Son of God and that he is the Messiah. Okay. So like, it doesn't really matter what people want to say pulling out from the book of John. John has told us, I wrote all these things, including the passage about being before Abraham. I wrote them all so that you may believe that he is the Son of God and that he is the Messiah. Anything outside of that is extra. Okay, it is not scriptural. It's not what John intended because he told us what he intended, right? And man, it is time that we change this.
Yep.
No, yeah, I agree.
Hermeneutics 101. What did the author intend?
Yeah. Like Mike said, he summarizes it at the end, and he reveals who he is. Like, all fairness, I'll grant like grace to a lot of the Trinitarians. If you only look at John 1:1, John 8:58, John 10:30, the Trinity of the John verses. Sure. Okay. Yes. We know that there's one God and, okay. So maybe there's another personhood in this, whatever. Fine. But Mike, like you said, at the end of his writing, he clarifies that I wrote this so that you may know he is the anointed one, the Christ, the Messiah, which we've seen other ones too, but he is now like the Son of God, right? He's kind of drawing how the past prophets were anointed, and then the Son of God, that's also a title that's given to Adam, which Paul later alludes to his verses, but it's never he's equal to God, all knowing of God, the three omnis, the hypostatic union, that none of that appears. It's just plain and simple. You're right. Yeah.
It's read into the text at virtually every angle they can find. And if we were going to say, what's the truth? How do we know if their interpretation is correct or not? How do you know? You study the language, you study the context. Okay, like this is the basics, right? You also have to understand that he literally says what he means, right? He told them, this is what I want you to believe. And so it's just, we have all the factors here that they are not getting it. That's not what he meant. That's not what he's saying. And wow, how many Christians in this one single topic are just all running to it. It's crazy.
And I think it's irritating too, because they keep saying John 8:58, like almost like, well, if I keep saying it enough times, sooner or later, Alex O'Connor will just believe it.
Right. Like, why have we not heard something else yet? Like, why do they keep going back to this verse? It's the same conversation over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I said in the very beginning, like, I wanted to say what I wanted to say about John 8:58, because I know it's going to be brought up like 5 other times. I'm not trying to sound like, a parrot, but like, I mean, guys, come up with better arguments. I don't know. I wish people would just bring up Isaiah 48:16. I feel like that's the best one, and I never hear that. I don't know. I disagree with it. It's the Trinity, but like, I feel like that's your best argument, but no one ever uses it.
It still wouldn't answer Alex's claim, though.
Yeah, right.
That's
Brad, like
we're having is not to the claim of did he specifically claim it. I mean, now it's even granted. The gospel authors, he thinks, believed it. He believes Paul claimed it, but he said Jesus didn't, and that's the big question here.
Right. All right, let's continue. I think Caleb's almost done. Yeah, He's got like 10 flags already.
That Jesus, the historical Jesus, actually said this. But even if he did, saying before Abraham was ego eimi, certainly seems to imply that he is maybe eternal, at least existed before his bodily form. That's pretty weird. But claiming to be God is a different thing. As I say, when Jesus walks on the water, the disciples think that they've seen a ghost. And what does Jesus say to them? Do not be afraid, ego eimi, which most Bibles translate as it's me, because sometimes saying ego
Okay,
eimi.
pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
All right, here comes Than.
Good to see you again.
All right. Two things. Have you heard of the Cloud Rider motif?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, the Cloud Rider motif.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm assuming you've heard of like the two powers in heaven.
Here we go.
No.
Okay. There's a Jewish historian named Alan Segal. He wrote a book called The Two Powers in Heaven. And what he talks about is there's this weird thing happening in the Hebrew Bible where there's almost like two Yahweh figures that they point to. So some verses, for instance, will say like Yahweh rained down fire from Yahweh.
Okay. I know, Brad, we all have a lot to say regarding this.
I got a lot for this.
Okay. So yes, the whole, now I want to bring this up too. So not just Alan F. Segal, he wrote a book, what Than here is alluding to. It's called Two Powers in Heaven, Early Rabbinic Reports About Christianity and Gnosticism, Liberty of Early Christology. There's also two other books I do want to bring up to people, just to be fair. One is Two Gods in Heaven, Jewish Concepts of God and Iniquity, the hardcover by Peter Schaefer. And then the third book is Glory of the Invisible God, the Two Powers in Heaven, Traditions and Early Christology, Jewish and Christian Texts, by Andrei Orlov. So those are the main three persons. My one thing with Dr. Alan Segal is that he has also kind of been under fire and has been criticized for his work by other scholars. So I want to bring that up. Real quick, I need to address this because Than brought up Genesis 19. And I'll be honest with you guys, I was really annoyed. I was really annoyed because I just want to read Genesis 19. I broke up some of the verses, right? In verse 1, it says, "Now 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he stood up to meet them, and he bowed down with his face to the ground." Right? So here we have 2 angels, the malachs, which just means messenger, which is also being applied to Zechariah and Haggai, prophets of God, normal human people. I want to bring that up. Verse 12 then says, "Then the 2 men sent to Lot, whom else do you have here? A son-in-law and your sons and your daughters, and whoever you have in the city, bring them out of this place. For we," the 2 angels, "are about to destroy this place because their outcry has become so great before the Lord that the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So the Lord, the Yud He Vav He, sent us, the 2 angels, to destroy this place. Verse 14. "So Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-laws who were to marry his daughters and said, 'Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord, Yud He Vav He, is destroying this city.'" Right? So the 2 angels who were sent by God, who are not God in any way, shape, or form, the 2 messengers were sent by God. They say that we were sent by him to destroy this place. Right? But then Lot here gives credit that the Yud He Vav He, Hashem, he will destroy this place.
Yeah.
Right. And again, with the concept of agency, one who sends another person out, you become that representative. That is why in verse 24, it says, "Then the Lord, Yud He Vav He, rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord, Yud He Vav He, out in heaven." So are 2 Yud He Vav He's mentioned? Yes, but the one represents the 2 messengers, the 2 angels, not literally. And I wish Than would just be honest with the text. Yes, sure, if we isolate verse 24 and ignore the other 23 verses, sure, absolutely. But that was very irritating for me. I just had a rant. Will Rants is going to be a new thing on my show. I'm not stealing it from anyone. I swear it's all my idea. But I was very annoyed by the dishonesty there. I'll shut up now.
Yep. All right, my turn. That whole premise is actually inherently contradictory to what those same people believe about the previous chapter and about the conversation being had between Abraham. And so I had a whole conversation about this last night because somebody brought up the angel of the Lord. I brought up that doesn't actually exist in the Old Testament. You'll never find the definite article respective to an angel that is a unique angel of the Lord. Their argument was that, okay, well, then name any other instance in the text of the Bible where an angel who is not God is mentioned as an angel of the Lord. So they were willing to accept an angel, but they still insisted that that angel is God. And that it's distinguished by the fact that no other angel apparently is called an angel of the Lord. So I was like, okay, like let's just pick any example of an angel in the Old Testament that you would agree is just an angel and not God. So they chose Genesis 19, okay, in which I pointed out verse 13, where it says that they would be the ones destroying Sodom. But then later it says that Hashem would be the one destroying Sodom. And they said, yeah, that's the angel of the Lord. And I'm like, okay, well, now hold on, because I'm pretty sure you also believe that the angel of the Lord is the one that you believe stayed behind to speak to Abraham. We had a conversation about whether or not one stayed behind, because the text says the men left, not two men left. It says the men left, right? Anyway, it's like, okay, so which one is the angel of the Lord then? Is the angel of the Lord the one that is actually carrying out judgment on Sodom, or the one that is speaking to Abraham? They can't both be the angel of the Lord here. Right. With respect to Hashem raining down fire from Hashem, this is something that Asher Meza actually has pointed out is a rather commonplace form of Hebrew speak called the disappearing third person. And we actually see this very same sentence structure in 1 Kings 8, verse 1, which says, "Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, all of the heads of tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto King Solomon in Jerusalem." So Solomon summoned all of the elders to Solomon. It's the exact same sentence structure, but we all know that King Solomon is the only Solomon there.
Yeah, and also with there's a verse in Genesis. The verse escapes me at the moment, but it's Lamech calls out the wives and says, "You wives of Lamech." He doesn't say himself. So yeah, we see that language. But and I think Rashi even brings up the example in Kings. But I mean, for me, it's agency. It's so clear. And here's one of the things, and I've had this discussion with so many people on TikTok regarding the whole agency thing. Like if I send Jeremy out to go tell Mike, the sky is blue, sure, but I cannot send Jeremy and Brad to tell Mike. Right, and count multiple as a singular person. But we actually have two examples of this in the New Testament. So even within the New Testament, John chapter 3, verse 22 through 26, right? It says that Yeshua and his disciples came to the land of Judea. There he, singular, so obviously Yeshua, was staying with them, the disciples, and immersing. Okay, so Yeshua is given the credit of being with his disciples, and Yeshua was immersing his disciples. You can read all that all the way through. But when you go to John chapter 4, verse 1 to 3, it says this: "Now Yeshua knew that the Pharisees heard that he was making and immersing more disciples than John. Although Yeshua was not immersing, his disciples were." Right, so it clarifies that even though his disciples are immersing, it's still Yeshua immersing them, right? Another example I want to bring up is in Acts chapter 9, right? Verses 3 to 6 specifically. It says, "As he was traveling, approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. Falling to the ground, he heard a voice," he being Saul right there. "Saul heard the voice saying to him, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?' 'Who are you, Lord?' Saul said. 'I am Yeshua, Jesus, whom you are persecuting, but get up, go into the city, and you will be told what you must do.'" Right? No time at any point did Saul ever persecute Jesus, Yeshua. Never. So how can he make this claim? We're told in Matthew 25:40, it says, "And answering, the king will say to them, 'Amen. I tell you, whatever you did to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me.'" And in Luke chapter 10, verse 16, "The one who listens to you hears me. The one who rejects you rejects me. And the one who rejects me rejects the one who sent me." So we see these examples of multiple people can be under that rule, that umbrella of agency. And this is not a Old Testament thing, so you can't even argue that, oh, that's Old Testament, we don't need it anymore. These are two clear examples on the New Testament where a group can be counted as the one, just as Genesis 19.
And it can be surmised that the authors of the New Testament were well aware of this concept. What you're talking about regarding agency is specifically the aspect of it that the agent is not distinguished from the principle, right? That they are essentially conflated as being one and the same. A Talmudic citation to support that is from Kiddushin 41b, specifically paragraph number 5, which finishes with, let's see, it can be derived from here that the legal status of a person's agent is like that of himself. So your agent is legally you. They are legally you.
That's why if you were to spit in Jesus's face, God could then say to you, hey, why did you spit in my face? Without it being literal, if I send Jeremy, go kick Mike in the shins, Mike is going to say, will Walkie kick me in the shins?
Mike's gonna say, don't kick me in the shins. That's what Mike's gonna say.
But it's I don't know. And look, Than's not a dummy, okay? But that did really irritate me because I hear that all the time, and it's like, dude, stop focusing on verse 24. Read the whole thing in context. The two messengers are represented as the Yud He Vav He. It's that simple. So
at least he's trying.
Oh no, yeah,
Than does the best. Trying to get away from.
Yeah, he's trying.
Abraham was I am.
No, look, I think Than does the best. I do. I think Than does the best out of Emily's a close second. I'm just kidding.
Well, there's some things I'd want to say, but let's let him finish creating his case.
Okay. Yeah. I just I heard with him saying that, oh well, he claims it's like
And so Philo of Alexandria in the Second Temple period talks about this two powers in heaven motif. And he says there's two Yahwehs. There's the first power and the second power, but they're both Yahweh. It's almost like a sort of proto-Trinitarian view. That's one thing that I'll just kind of put there for now. Another puzzle piece here is you've heard about the cloud rider motif. So in the Ugaritic texts, in the Baal cycle, we see Baal referenced as the one who rides the clouds. And I think you can see that actually adopted by the Israelites in the Hebrew Bible as well. So Psalm 104 is like an exaltation psalm and actually talks about Yahweh being the one that rides the clouds in heaven. He is the...
Okay, real quick, I just want to say, for anyone interested, if you go to the Biblical Unitarian podcast by Dr. Dustin Smith, he actually addresses the whole Philo claim. If anyone's interested, it's episode 323. Was Philo a two powers in heaven heretic? By Dr. Dustin Smith. It's about a 30-minute episode where he explains Philo's position properly. Alan F. Segal in his book, he makes quotes, but he doesn't go into the details on it. I just wanted to say that real quick for anyone. But yeah, I'll continue it.
The king. I see that as kind of a polemic of calling Yahweh the king over Baal. Are we on the same page there?
Sure.
Okay. Into Daniel 7, you'll see a messianic passage there about how God will come down, and you'll see the Son of Man come riding in the clouds of heaven, and his kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom.
Do you think Daniel thought that the Son of Man was going to be God, since he says that he's riding on a cloud?
This is a really interesting point.
I don't think that he did, because he was a Jewish writer.
I lean on saying yes, but I don't know if I can say that with absolute certainty.
The prophet Daniel was expecting the Messiah to be God.
I think so.
Oh, sorry, the Son of Man to be God.
That's a motif only applied to God. So you have this cloud rider motif.
By the way, I do think that there are multiple things which people, even in Jesus' time, thought only God could do.
Mm-hmm.
Things like forgiving sins. And when Jesus does these things, he's not doing so in order to prove that he's God, but in order to prove that the Son of Man has the authority to do that.
I completely agree. This isn't that kind of an argument. This is an identification thing.
So where's Jesus claiming to be God?
That's where I'm going. So we have these puzzle pieces in place.
Sure.
If you fast forward to Mark's gospel, and I'm going to use Mark.
Let's do Mark.
Jesus before Caiaphas in Mark's gospel, Caiaphas asks him, who are you?
Can you pause it
and
here?
Instead of
this is where he transitions. Okay, so
Yeah.
listen, here's just a few things that I just want to point out. A lot of the things he's setting forth, listen, as far as I can understand and I can find in history, okay, were like explicitly rejected once Orthodox Judaism really took form. Okay. I think that even in some of these writings he's mentioning, like the Two Powers by Alan Segal, like didn't he himself basically say that many saw it as like a rejection to monotheism or like a threat to monotheism. Also, listen, I've looked at these things and I'm not even sure how you could say that this quote second power was even equal to Yahweh. Like the way that they are talked about. I mean, it's like, as Will, you had mentioned a lot earlier, right? That they're like sent, right? That they're like functionally subordinate to God. I think by the time you start talking about Metatron, right, or a glorified angel or human or something like that, some people even think it might have been like Enoch. But the point is that it wasn't co-equal with Yahweh, right? So we're talking about. I mean, he mentioned Philo. I have to check out that video, by the way, that you mentioned.
Yeah,
the Biblical Unitarian podcast. That's probably a really good one. Right, the attributes, right, the agents of God. That is in the text. And last thing I wanted to mention about this is that this whole two powers framework is like rooted in like apocalyptic vision language. Okay, like this isn't about ontology. And to me, that's like the debate here. That's the debate about Jesus being God. What does that mean, right? Daniel 7 talking about two thrones in the Son of Man. If this isn't talking about ontology, well, then the whole thing fails. I mean, to begin with. So again, my response to this is that, listen, from what I can find, this idea was explicitly condemned in Jewish tradition. Okay, and even to this day, I'm aware of any Orthodox Jews who accept the two powers as something that was viable.
Okay.
And again, I would say that they're not co-equal. I don't see that. It seems like in most cases, these things are created. They're subordinate by nature. And of course, the source texts, I think, are highly apocalyptic in their language, not ontological.
I always picture
Coach. You reminded me of one point that I forgot to touch on in my rant about the two powers bit. And that's anytime that this gets brought up, right? It always gets brought up as though this is ancient Jewish knowledge from prior to the Gospels. And it's always referred to that way. They'll always say that this is found in Jewish texts and in Jewish writings. And I take issue with that. Anytime somebody brings it up, the first question I always ask them is, okay, before we get into this, are you willing to concede that the Ebionites are early Christians? Right? The answer I usually get is no, they were heretics. I was like, okay, well, then you don't get to appeal to any of what you're about to appeal to because those were not Jews. That was not Judaism. That was heretical. Those were heretics, which is why no Orthodox Jew today believes in that. Those were heretics. They were a sectarian group severed off from the community of Israel, and Jesus literally never even encounters them in the biblical narrative, right?
Yeah. It's just so crazy to me. Like, Than is like top tier, and the best you got to this answer is two powers. Like, it kind of blows my mind. He may be trying to stay away from other things people mentioned. I don't know. And Than is like a nice guy, obviously, but yeah, it's just wild to me.
Even if the two powers could answer the Trinitarian question, it doesn't answer the question, did Jesus claim? Now, actually, I think where he's about to go is if this does, because Jesus does say, you'll see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power. So I guess this is probably, Will, you said this, he does the best job. And so if you can get that, this does make answer the Trinitarian question, then sure. But it actually doesn't answer Trinity. It answers Jesus and the Father.
No, yeah, I'm just saying I think it's the best argument, but it is. What do I got to choose from? This is irritating though, also for me.
It's theoretically possible that Adam sat there,
right? But see, when Christians quote the Talmud, right, It drives me nuts. Okay. When you read the entire Talmud is rabbis arguing with themselves about certain biblical passages. For example, Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4, what is his name and his son's name? It literally talks about how one rabbi says that it's referring to Israel, and he will give 5 verses to support his claim. Another rabbi will come in and say, no, you're wrong. It's actually about Ezekiel, or I'm sorry, Elijah. It's about Elijah, and he gives those verses for his point, right? They're arguing with themselves about the Tanakh, about halakha, and historical events are brought up, right? There are, and Brad, you can defend me on this. There are so many heresies and arguments that are brought up concerning who God is, what God can do, is God a man? And it's just a record of it. It's not like the Bible. It's just a historical account of rabbis arguing about the Tanakh, about halakha, and historical events. Like, that's really it. And it's really dishonest how everyone focuses on, 2 powers in heaven. All the Jews believed this at one time until the bad Pharisees came in and they eliminated it, just like they did to Jesus. Like, all the bad, evil Pharisees came in and eliminated Jesus, but they all believed in the 2 powers. Like, that's so wrong. I believe one person is mentioned by name for this idea. Brad, I don't know if you can correct me on that or not, but I believe only one person by name is mentioned. Like, it doesn't even say the whole group believed in it. It's just more dishonesty.
Right. And it's a lot of it is built on speculation regarding some of the early findings in the Qumran community. We've been fed this narrative that there was this like split within the priesthood, and that the true priests resided in Qumran, and the priests that were serving in the temple were not Zadokites. And this is actually, it's long debunked Maccabean period history. Like that has not been the scholarly consensus on that period of time since the early 1900s. I mean, we've moved well beyond that, and you've got like scholars like Greg Dudna that go meticulously over the evidence and present that like, well, actually, like, you know, this schism you're building didn't exist. They were a sectarian group and they were rightful priests, but there's really no evidence that they like viewed themselves as unique and different from the priests who were actively serving in the temple at that time. They were a satellite position, so far as we can tell, based on archaeological evidence.
You know, for me, at the end of the day, even if we are extremely charitable with what he's presenting right now, extremely charitable, and we just like give him basically everything, he still hasn't proved the point. It doesn't prove the point. It's certainly not Trinitarianism. The 2 powers is where's the way? Shouldn't it be 3 powers, folks? Like, like I think he even says, if I remember correctly, he calls it like a primitive form of Trinitarianism or something. Sorry, there is no primitive form. It's either there or it's not. And if it's not, then we're talking about something that developed, okay, which would literally support Alex's position. Like, it's just, it's wild to me. I mean, so even if extremely charitable, extremely.
Calling it a primitive form actually is admitting that it was developed. I mean, it's an inherent acknowledgement that it was developed,
and that Alex's position is true.
Yes,
that the way they portray him as God is this later tradition.
Yeah. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think we have like a minute left.
Saying, I am God, Jesus quotes Daniel 7, saying he is the Son of Man, the human one, who will ride on the clouds, and calls himself the second power. So you have this 2 powers in heaven motif.
No, he doesn't.
The 2 powers, they're both God, and the cloud rider motif, and the Son of Man. He's quoting Daniel 7 to identify himself. After that Caiaphas tears his robe and cries
Yes.
blasphemy.
I do think that Jesus is making some pretty extraordinary claims to himself, such as being the Son of Man, but I still don't see why he's claiming to be God. If this were the way that he was trying to reveal his divinity to people, it'd be a strange and convoluted way to do it. Psalm 82 also talks about God presiding over a council of gods, saying,
so
you shall be called
I
gods.
think there's a mistake here.
And
'cause
Jesus quotes that psalm when he's referring to his relationship with the Father
I understand what you're
in the
saying.
Gospel of
The
John.
issue
So
is
even if in the Old Testament you have these
two
sort of
hypotheses,
lesser
though,
gods,
right?
Jesus is
You have
only
your
claiming to be that.
hypothesis, right? That this is not a Christological implication, and I have mine. And I get what you're saying, where you're coming from. But to the ancient author, how obvious would this be?
So the best we have here is Jesus claiming to be the Son of Man, and that might indicate that he might be God.
Yeah, well, we don't predicate our hypotheses on the evidence we wish we did have. We go off the evidence that we do have.
That's right. And I don't think that there's any point at which Jesus says.
So you're saying
I am
that
God.
this is not
All right, guys, that's time.
Evidence, but not good enough. It's so nice to be out. Sorry, we haven't got more time. I wish we could.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah, it's rough. That ending was rough. That's a conversation you wish they would have more time to actually flesh things out. They were cutting each other off. I wish he had let Alex finish his point, what he was trying to say. But yeah, I think that none of these people who came up refuted his position. I don't think any of them did so. And it's crazy to say that because I think he asserts his position in a way that even I don't agree with, right? I don't believe that Jesus was God. His claim, though, is that, well, Jesus never claimed to be God. And it's just all the arguments brought against him were just weak, totally weak. Like, guys, I don't know about you, but I can't sign on to any of these social media platforms without being served a dozen people. Like at any given moment, there's a Christian, dozens of them streaming, Jesus is God, right? Like, this should be the easiest claim. It should be so easy to disprove. Jesus claimed to be God here, right? No, it's all like mystical. It's all esoteric, right? They have this higher revelation. And each people, depending on which sect of Christianity you're coming from, have like their own slightly different traditions on how they word it and how they pull it. And again, I think the fact they didn't define what they mean by God was just totally set it up to fail. You shouldn't be making rudimentary mistakes like that. This is a debate forum. You need to define what you mean so they can actually get somewhere. And of course, like so many common misconceptions, also come out with the before Abraham was I am and the two powers. And yeah, I mean, it's almost like the Mormon actually did the best out of everybody here. Which is crazy. If you watch like the whole thing too, he picks the Mormon. Like, yeah, his first thing. Like, I thought he actually did the best out of any of them. But anyways, that's my take on it. That's my take.
So hold on real quick. Let me say this, because Than, again, I feel like he's misrepresenting what Daniel 7 says. So here's Daniel chapter 9, verse 9 and 10, right? I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days, like referring to God, took his seat. His garment was as white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were burning in a fire, and a river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were serving him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court convened, and the books were open. Now, starting in verse 13 now, I kept looking in the night in visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. So there's a distinction. There is a clear distinction between like the Ancient of Days and this one coming on the clouds, like the Son of Man was coming, which, Jesus, Yeshua, he makes reference to this. And dominion was given to him, honor and a kingdom, so that all peoples and nations and populations might serve him. His dominion is everlasting dominion, blah, blah, blah. But there's a distinction there, because I think what Than does is he like says that Jesus claims to be the second power or God, and that's just not true. And I think that's also, I'm irritated on, but
I honestly, again, I gotta give him props just on simply staying out of the book of John. And like, that's the thing. He didn't just avoid the before Abraham was I am passage. He stayed away from the book of John entirely, which it honestly, like, that's a bold move for a Trinitarian, because like we saw at the very beginning of this, that's the immediate go-to for every Trinitarian is the book of John. So for him to come out swinging with an argument not from the book of John, honestly, I applaud it. There was some misinformation. There was some, and I don't even think misinformation. I think he is not as read up on that subject matter.
But then why talk about it though? Come on.
Fair, though, he is probably the only one that actually attempted to answer the question, did Jesus claim it? By using that.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think he did a good job. And like, Brad said, he's not right about Daniel, but he used Daniel to make the point that when Jesus said, you'll see this, he's claiming that he is one of those two powers. So, I think he's about the only one that actually interacted with the actual claim.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked that nobody went to, John 10, the Father and I are one. That seems like if I were a Trinitarian, I would think that is a much more direct, almost claim to be God than before Abraham was I am. But I think they've worn that one out, because that used to be the go-to for all of them, right? They've worn that one out, and I think all of them know that what comes immediately after that is John 17, 21 through 23.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think Mike and we tell people that all the time, where it's not even used. So, well, I don't know. And this is one of the things too, like, we should be brothers with these people who came up. I believe it was 6 people. All 6 people who came up. But I just wish Christians, if you think this is your holy book, please just read it. Right? Let's stop regurgitating what we hear from ecumenical councils and the early church fathers and what my pastor said. Just read it for yourself. Like, how important is this? Like, this is eternal life. For them to know you, the one only true God, and the one whom you've sent, Jesus Christ. I think just stay away from this philosophical mindset of who God is, and just read your freaking Bible. If you consider this your holy book, you should know it. But I don't know. I think I'm good on my end. I think I've addressed everything. Is there anything else you guys want to say before we close out?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for organizing this. This was definitely awesome. First time appearing on the same screen with Metaphysics Mike. Brother, I would love to have you on our platform sometime. Maybe we can schedule an interview and get a little bit of your testimony and how you've come to where you're going. I think it'd be awesome. So if you would, please hit me up afterwards.
Okay, I appreciate that. That sounds great. Thanks, Brad.
Well, yeah, so everyone watching, please subscribe to Metaphysics Mike YouTube channel. Please subscribe to Brad at Alternate Media. Subscribe to Jeremy at Renovating the Faith Podcast. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this was a good conversation that you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below if we should do more stuff like this. And I don't know. That being said, shalom, guys.